Hey guys, this is a second video in a series called What's Unique About This Unique, or in short, WUATU. This series is to help players understand how to approach certain unique items and make builds around them on their own. And even if you are not a new player, you may still discover some useful info, and this may work as a reminder that you wanted to do some build around this for some time now. Most requested uniques in the first video were Mjolnir and WUATU, and I want to play with WUATU next, so for now I'm gonna talk about Mjolnir. While Mjolnir isn't very complicated unique, but some of its mechanic may seem confusing. First, of course, Mjolnir is a direct copy of Mjolnir, and is of course lighting themed. And you have to be both strong and smart enough to prove you are worthy using this mace, as it requires 412 strength and 300 intelligence. But it is actually pretty easy to get that much strength and intelligence, but more about that later. Over time, Mjolnir has gone through some highs and lows, and long ago it was one of the most expensive items. Maybe like 5 years ago I still remember wanting to play with Mjolnir, but back then it costed 40 exalts. And as of this recording, the price is only around 35 years for non-corrupted version. Its power has also went down, but this item is still strong. However, you may need some extra investment if you want to push this to current endgame in Metamorph League, since all bosses have more life and resistances now. Nonetheless, it is pretty low investment to start the build before you figure out if you like this playstyle or not. Now more about the Mjolnir itself. Mjolnir is pretty slow weapon and pretty low DPS, but it can trigger lighting spells socketed inside it. But of course it does require you to hit enemies with an attack. And it does have a cooldown per spell. The cooldown is 150 milliseconds, which means one Mjolnir can trigger around 6.67 times per second. Of course, you can reduce this cooldown by getting increased cooldown recovery speed on other items. Probably most popular ways of playing with Mjolnir is doing cast on crit or cast while channeling, but they are also a bit more expensive. Long-lasting popular build is to use Cyclone attack with Discharge, because Discharge has a lighting tag, which is important to remember. But these days, Discharge has fallen down and is more of a "oh look at me, I'm so fancy" kind of a build. Other popular lighting spells to use with Mjolnir are Shock Nova, Ball Lighting, Arc. Less popular are Storm Call, Spark, Wave of Conviction. You can also dual wield Mjolnirs, but that will require more hits per second to get full benefits from triggered spells. I mentioned that the cooldown is per spell, which means you can socket 2 or even 3 spells inside one Mjolnir, and you will trigger them sequentially from top left to right to bottom socket. If you have enough hits per second, you could be triggering all these 3 spells one after another with almost no delay. But practically it is usually better to have 1 or 2 spells supported by other support gems for more damage rather than socketing 3 different spells without any support gems. Also, you cannot use 2 of the same spells in one Mjolnir because they share the cooldown and only one will trigger. An important thing to remember is that you can use other methods to trigger same lighting spells. For example, if you have Ball Lighting inside Mjolnir, you can trigger another Ball Lighting with Cyclone cast while channeling, or for example Static Strike cast on crit, and so on. And last useful thing about Mjolnir is skills chains plus 1 times, making Static Strike AoE bigger or giving extra chain to Arc for more clear speed, and in some cases doing more damage to initial target, which comes from Deadeye's node called Ricochet, which provides increased projectile damage per remaining chain, and yes, that works with Ball Lighting, and is also a really good way of boosting your Arc's single target DPS potential. Now more about other useful items. If you remember, Mjolnir requires 412 strength and 300 intelligence, and my favorite item to use while leveling is Aziri's Foible Amulet, which will solve any of your mana issues that you may be having, and most importantly has 25% reduced attribute requirements for items and gems, which means with this amulet you only need 309 strength and 225 intelligence, which is very easy to do on the left side of the passive skill tree. Alternatively, you could use Astramantis Amulet, which can provide 100 plus to all attributes, but it is also much more expensive compared to Aziri's Foible Amulet and gives you nothing else besides attributes. If you are not somewhere near left side of the passive skill tree, you may want to use unique jewels to transform allocated attributes in radius into strength or intelligence. Those jewels are called Fertile Mind for Dex into Int and Inertia for Dex into Strength. You can always search wiki for a list of unique items and check each item slot and find a matching unique item, but for endgame you will most likely want to craft a rare item with enough attributes and other useful mods like spell damage, penetration, attack speed, and so on. Just to tease you with some ideas to use alongside Mjolnir. Indigon Helmet provides a massive boost to spell damage but requires you to spend mana, which means you also need to build more mana and mana recovery. Romira's Banquet Ring generates power charges for each non-critical hit, and you can use those power charges for discharge. But annoying part is that Romira's Banquet also has a critical strike chance and critical strike multiplier, but if you crit, you lose all power charges. So the best way to go about it is by taking Resolute Technique from the passive skill tree, making you never deal critical strikes. But that provides another problem. If you do not crit, you cannot trigger Elemental Overload passive, which gives 40% more elemental damage. But I think I will leave this puzzle for you to solve. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments below or ask me during my stream, and I stream almost every day. Links to my stream will be in the description. Also, leave a comment which item should I prioritize next. I'm not sure if I should be talking about the new items, because it takes time to try them out and figure out the best builds, or maybe I should just talk about the mechanics then. For now, thank you for watching and I will see you soon.